the last little while, and then just in this last few moments of meditation, I've been really thinking about that here we are in the last days of retreat. And the first days of retreat are still quite vivid in my mind. And then, what makes it last? What made it first? When was the moment when the retreat started? And, we already talked about having different ideas about when's the moment when the quote retreat ends. And between that arbitrarily designated moment of beginning and an arbitrarily designated moment at the end, day follows day, and session follows session. Mala follows mala. One recitation follows the next. One syllable of that mantra follows the next. All these continuities that we live within. Constantly in motion, moving. And how astonishing to receive teachings, the Buddha's understanding of how subtle impermanence works. Everything is arising, abiding, ceasing in this very same moment. And how much suffering we endure by grasping and hanging on to any frame in this ongoing flow. So as we come to the end of this quote retreat, we can also think about what does the end mean? What does retreat mean? What can we carry with us wherever we go? And how can we bring these accumulated experiences of one day following the next, and one session following the next, and one mala following the next, and so forth, into our everyday awareness, so that our motivation to become fully awakened by the very same awareness, one practice follows another, purification follows another, cultivating good qualities, that grows too, moment by moment by moment. How we can bring that awareness into really deepening our commitment to setting our goal on complete awakening, our mind towards complete awakening, by recognizing how much suffering comes from this clinging to our permanence, clinging to phenomena that we think are bringing us pleasure, which are by nature unsatisfactory, clinging to the purity of our bodies, clinging to this independent, so solid, so seemingly real self for whom we do everything. So transforming this experience, remembering that every moment of this has left an imprint in our mind, and dedicating all that we've learned, thought, seen that's virtuous towards our genuine aspiration to be of benefit to all beings by becoming Buddhas, and to hold that aspiration for all other beings as well. So set that motivation for tonight. When I was really small, I'm like kindergarten age, I lived with my great-grandparents for a while. And in retreat, of course, I don't know where this memory came from, this very, very vivid memory of walking hand in hand with my great-grandfather. Every evening he took a walk down the block towards the Merida bread factory, where he had been a mechanic for the fleet of bread trucks. And they baked at night, so you could smell the Merida bread rising, and down to the railroad tracks that had been critical to the Battle of Atlanta. So, I knew the whole history of that corner. And just this sense that he had always of, for me, it was like this real sense of security, holding my great-grandfather's hand and walking down the block, but also remembering how some part of that whole experience of living with them at that time, whether they said this out loud or not, but there was this sense of how time speeds up when you get older that I've been aware of since I was teeny weeny because of living with them, So now as I'm getting older, it's really true. Somehow the 3 months is shorter than 3 months would have been even 10 years ago. Not actually, of course, but faster, 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 faster. So, I don't know, especially this year with the weather has been so interesting that we had snow right up until like Monday, and then so it's just also fluid, I guess is the point. And how fortunate that we have the experience of being able to watch that for a while, so we can carry that forward. It will really help us in our practice, I think, to not get so hung up on our I was talking with Venerable Semke today about our poor quality view, that we cling to our inability, our practice isn't so strong, I'm not good enough, my life isn't so great. How many times have I said to myself, I should just give up and start over, I've messed up this life so badly. Those kinds of thoughts in this flow, they're not so relevant. I don't know if that makes sense. But anyway, hello. Venerable Thupten Triden and Venerable Thupten Damcho are still in Taiwan. That was a line first written by Venerable Losang, Thupten Losang, who was supposed to be giving this review tonight. But also a big surprise in his life, a family member has passed away, and so Losang is with his family, and Thupten Chini is here, barely prepared. So we'll use some of Losang's notes, and we'll use some of my stuff, and see where we get tonight. Because anyway, it's time to be together in the Dharma. It's good enough. This review is covering the material beginning chapter 3, Mind and Emotions in Approaching the Buddhist Path. It's a short section, page 39 to 44, that he was assigned. So we will elaborate on it. And then there will be 3 more reviews before Venerable's back in this seat. Name of the chapter, Mind and Emotions. Okay. Subsection titled Buddhism, Science, and Emotions. A subsection titled Happiness, Unhappiness, Virtue, and Non-Virtue. We may or may not look at the reflections. And then I wanted to share my favorite motivation on meditation on cultivating fortitude, because it was something I could talk about. And it fit with the theme well enough. Well enough, it'll do. So the chapter begins like this. We are emotional beings. Our feelings of pleasure or pain provoke different emotions, and our emotions motivate us to act. Some of our emotions are afflictive and unrealistic, others are more realistic and beneficial. As a result, some of our actions bring more pain, while others bring happiness. Learning to differentiate destructive from constructive emotions so we can subdue the former and nourish the latter is a worthy endeavor on a personal as well as a societal level. And I would dare say you could say that's the summary of our entire path. That's certainly what we've been doing for the last 3 months. Learning to differentiate destructive and constructive emotions so that we subdue the former. That's what we're working on, right? Nourish the latter. In this chapter, and that's what the Buddhas have done. They've built up and expanded constructive emotions such as love and compassion, and they've eliminated their greed and anger and so forth. So that's what this chapter is really introducing. It's kind of a general overview of the whole path. So in Losong's notes, he says, these two paragraphs say a lot about the Buddhist view, that our minds are the source of our happiness and pain, and that by doing the inner work of recognizing which mental states are constructive and which are destructive, overcoming the latter and developing the former, we become happier and ultimately totally liberated. So we are emotional beings. Our emotions motivate us to act. Here, that's not what that first sentence is. The first sentence says what? Who's got a book open?
The very first sentence?
Second one. Our feelings of pleasure or pain provoke different emotions. So that's a causal chain. We're emotional beings. Our feelings of pleasure or pain provoke different emotions, and then our emotions motivate us to act. So here in that sentence about our feelings motivate our emotions, feeling is not an emotion. Feelings refers to the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings that arise. And Venerable spent some time expanding on this, and we're going to do that too, only we're going to go a little bit further. Because this component of feeling is, I spent some time on it in meditation, Venerable Tarpa did too, and I suspect she knows a lot more about this than I do, but really interesting to look at that chain of, it's subtle, but how it is that we have contact with a sense object. Every single moment of mind is accompanied by this mental factor of feeling. Our response to the feeling is so the feeling arises either pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, pleasure, unpleasant, neutral. And how we respond to that feeling then immediately dictates what happens next. The emotion that arises, often the affliction that arises, the action then that follows from that. So interesting to look at. Feeling is identified as one of the 5 aggregates, right? Which are what?
Form, feeling, discrimination, miscellaneous factors, consciousness.
Yes. Form, feeling, discrimination, miscellaneous factors, and consciousness. Feeling is also the 7th of the 12 links. That's what Venerable was talking about. So the 6th link is contact. Feeling arises right? Immediately craving follows in an ordinary mind. Craving followed by clinging, and these are both 2 forms of attachment in the 12 links thing, but they are both 2 forms of attachment. Then in 12 links, the 10th link then follows as becoming or existence. It activates the karma, activates the ripening of the karma for the next life at the time of death. So this craving is more than just simple attachment. So the craving here is to crave to have more of the pleasant feeling, or crave to be free of the unpleasant feeling, or craving that the feeling will end. It's put in 2 different ways. Craving that the neutral feelings don't disappear. This is really subtle. Unless it turns into a pleasant feeling, of course, and then we're craving for it to continue as a pleasant feeling. So in these 3 ways, and then motivated by that, we act. Moment by moment. It's, of course, the 12 links is describing it critically at the time of death, because it's that contact, feeling, craving. She doesn't use grasping. What does she use? Clinging, craving, clinging, becoming. Birth.
Renewed existence.
Yeah, renewed existence. In the book, it's in the book she uses becoming still. So it's always ignorance or afflictions that spark emotions, that bring the karma. We create the actions. The actions bring the result of a situation, every situation in cyclic existence. So there's just this whole chain of causality. So I've often wondered, and this is just me, I don't know if this is the answer, but for years I've wondered, why did the Buddha single out these 5 things and make them the aggregates? Why is that? I still don't know the answer, the textbook answer for sure, but to think about the role feeling has in our entire experience. I mean, you want to say it's everything. It's not, but it has a powerful, powerful role in what we experience, how we view the world, how we act, and what we create as our upcoming experience. So I did a little research in Soti Venerable Losang. Sthiramati, commenting on Vasubandhu's explanation of this particular aggregate, says, quote, "Some scholars believe the following. Feeling is experience, in the sense of being the entity that experiences the various ripening results of virtuous and non-virtuous deeds. Thus, pleasant experiences are the ripening results of virtuous deeds. Unpleasant experiences are the ripening results of non-virtuous deeds, and those experiences that are neither pleasant nor unpleasant are the ripening results of both." That's from the Vasubandhu point of view. So, every moment we're experiencing something, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. That means in every moment we're experiencing a ripening result of some action, some time in the past. Venerable Losang found some sutra sources that were interesting. In the Samyutta Nikaya, both of these. Feeling. What is feeling? These 6 bodies of feeling. Feeling born of eye contact. Feeling born of ear contact. Feeling born of nose contact. Feeling born of tongue contact. Feeling born of body contact. Feeling born of intellect contact. This is called feeling. And then Sister Dhammadina is quoted in the same Nikaya. 3 cheers for the Bhikshunis. There are 3 kinds of feeling: pleasant feeling, painful feeling, and neither pleasant nor painful feeling. Whatever is experienced physically or mentally as pleasant and gratifying is a painful feeling. Whatever is experienced physically or mentally as a painful and hurting is a painful feeling. Whatever is experienced physically or mentally as neither gratifying nor hurting is neither pleasant nor painful feeling. So often translated as neutral, but it's, I think, at least in all the Pali I saw, it's either neither pleasant nor painful. Pleasant feeling is pleasant in remaining and painful in changing. Painful feeling is painful in remaining and pleasant in changing. Neither pleasant nor painful feeling is pleasant when conjoined with knowledge, and painful when devoid of knowledge. So here it's outlining this, and Vasubandhu is clear about this. There's many different divisions actually of feeling, but one of the ways dividing these is that it's mental and physical. So that would bring 6 types. Okay. Pleasant feeling, physical and mental. Unpleasant feeling, physical and mental. Neutral feeling, physical and or mental. So, given that as a framework, I thought we've just spent 3 months looking at our destructive actions and purifying them. Did people focus on feeling a little bit as well? Did that come into people's focus as you were looking at it? Maybe, maybe not. Some, yes, some, no, some. Okay, well, let's just think about it for a minute. Spend a little time with it here. Not much, but some. And this, I think, is a beginning question. Where do we look to ascertain feeling? Yeah. Where? Like if you, right, that's the harder question. Where? Okay, let's look at body first. Close your eyes. And just see in this very moment, a feeling is happening moment by moment. Can we ascertain in the body the arising of painful, pleasant, neither painful nor pleasant feeling? And then let's switch and think about a mental feeling. Where do we look to ascertain that? And can we tell right now, are we experiencing a pleasant, unpleasant, neutral mental feeling? So what do you think? You can find it? Yes?
The body feeling, it's like I scan the whole body, but there's an element around the chest that I focus on, that goes to, is like checking in here. And then also the mind is checking around this heart area as well. So, but there's like the low level feeling that's kind of here, and then there's the thoughts that are kind of coming up around the back of my head that's influencing the feeling as well.
So it's a thought that rises in response to the feeling and then also then influences the feeling?
Yeah, there's like this, the lower level kind of more stable feeling, and then there's the blips of the thoughts that influence it. Right?
And if a fire ant crawled onto your foot and took a chomp out of your foot, would you still feel it here? No. Yeah.
When twinges in my back, then yeah.
Any other thoughts on that experience? Yeah, Em?
So I used to and still do have a lot of pain, or not as much anymore, pain sitting in meditation. So I used to spend a lot of time sitting with it and just seeing what it is that hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And I always come to the conclusion that I can't actually identify where exactly it hurts and like what exactly that feeling is. So I've kind of played with that for a while, and I have a very hard time with that.
Yeah. I do too. I think it's quite subtle to find it. Like, looking back, I definitely had a feeling, physical or mental. But the affliction that follows is much more vivid in my experience. So then I can trace it back and be like, oh, yeah.
I definitely feel a sense of restlessness coming up, and so then I may then have the indicator, okay, something is going on within me. Or even if I meditate upon, Vajrasattva, and I know the picture is just not stable and my mind is just here and there, and then I know that there's something behind. Because it's not just thoughts, mostly it's emotions that are really catching me, and I'm in the whirlpool of that.
Right. Yeah. So you have clues
Yes.
that something's going on, but the actual connection with the sensation itself doesn't sound like that's so present. I mean, that's just a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I definitely sensation. I'm not sure what the question can you. But anyway.
Right. So you can see a restless mind, or you can see things that are grosser than the actual feeling of.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So it's interesting to look at and how to find that feeling. No, so take another minute. Let's try to step back. So this causal chain, okay, feeling, then craving arises, affliction that may stem from that craving arises, motivates action. So if we think about something that we've been purifying the last 3 months, and think of a big one, a kind of a gross one, can you trace back a little bit the action, then the affliction, the craving that motivated that affliction, or that might be right behind it, and then the feeling before the craving, and maybe even the contact. What was the stimulus? This is a very quick thing, so it's, I'm not looking for any profundity here, but just to see the chain, if we can think about something we've been purifying and trace it back. Well, so is the craving always necessarily needed?
After feeling, is craving necessarily there? Because my understanding is after the feeling, you get the afflictions and then the distorted, and then you get karma.
Right.
But I've never heard like craving is always there.
In following the 12 links, in an ordinary mind, craving immediately follows. And it's one of those 3 types of craving. Craving to have more of the pleasure, to be separated from the pain in some way, or to crave for the neutral feeling not to stop. So out of all those 3 kinds of craving, like craving for the pain to go away, mostly arises instantly in anger. Right? We're trying to smash it, get away from it, stop it in some way. So it's interesting to think about the affliction arising as a result of that craving, but that's the way it's outlined in those 12 links. We want more, we want more, we want more, we want more. And so there's a gross level of looking at that. The chocolate cake analogy is always good. How much chocolate cake can you keep eating? We want a bite before we've even finished the first cake. We're looking over there to see if there's more, because we want more. Whether we actually get up or not is something else. But, and the same thing with trying to separate from the pain. That mosquito happens so fast. Why do I smash that mosquito? Because there's a physical sensation that's unpleasant on my arm. And maybe a mental sensation too. Yeah.
We talked about this with Venerable Children during a BBC one day, and I remember Venerable Sangha Kadro asked a question about this. She was kind of saying, it happens so quick, it always goes forward like that. And I said to Venerable Children, well, how could that? I thought that the place and she confirmed this, that from contact of feeling, you can't stop that.
Right.
But after feeling, you can stop it.
Yes, you can. But an ordinary mind does not.
I don't agree with that either, because an ordinary mind doesn't always slap a mosquito when they feel an unpleasant thing.
That's true.
And I think that it's possible to have, for an ordinary person, well, what do you mean by ordinary? Someone who isn't an Arya? I mean, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I do. But I think we're talking about the same thing.
Even a person who
Vilatorpa.
doesn't meditate, let me finish my thought. I
Yeah.
believe that even a person who doesn't meditate, but they're maybe have some self-awareness, could probably stop sometimes that feeling and just not even go to craving. You know, I mean, if they have any kind of self-reflection, you don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be on the cushion to
Yeah.
have self-reflection. So anyway,
Yeah, I think-
that's my, or else then the point that she made, which
Yeah.
is the big point, is like, if you can't make the case that you can stop that and that it's that, you know, then why are we practicing the Dharma?
Right, but you're 3 steps ahead of where I'm going. I have notes from a talk where she gave a talk on in Russia on this too. Yeah, the 4 establishments of mindfulness, and I deleted them so I don't have them in front of me. But it's the same thing. Yes, we can stop from slapping that mosquito. We may or may not actually be able to stop the craving to be separated from that feeling yet.
As an ordinary being, what do you mean by ordinary?
As Venerable was pretty clear in that statement, that until we have an awareness, and I'm sorry I deleted it because it would be here, but that until we have a deeper awareness and understanding of what's happening at the very subtle level, the response will still arise. Then we have choice. But ultimately, what we want to do is cut feeling, craving completely.
That seems logical.
Yeah.
I understand that from what you were saying. Now I do.
Yeah, okay. But in an ordinary, unexamined experience, that's what's happening constantly for us. I don't think that you can argue with that. Does that make sense?
It's interesting how something would still be painful if you didn't want to be separated from it. Like, you know, we're saying we can cut the craving to be free or to get more, but how would we know the feeling was pleasant or unpleasant it's based on our reaction.
Yeah, so there's reaction, and there's also the awareness and making a choice about it.
Like, if a painful feeling arises, it's painful because I want to be separated from it. But if I don't have that urge, how would it
The want to
still
be
painful?
separated happens after the feeling of pain. Now, there is something I did quote. This is coming from the sutra view as well. Chandrakirti says, there's an interesting note here at the bottom. Because the thing it brings up then is, it's Chandrakirti's view that Buddha acknowledged the 3 types of feeling, that is, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, only to comply with the view of ordinary beings. The central element of this view is that ordinary beings mistakenly perceive themselves to have pleasurable experiences based on their inability to recognize that entities are not substantially real. Right? So that as ordinary beings, we have the perception that each of these is objectively painful, pleasurable, or neutral. And that presentation comes from that point of view. But someone who knows that they are not objectively painful, pleasurable, or neutral would know precisely. Yeah. But we don't in our experience. So yes, it is totally possible, and that's part of the advantage of meditating on these. Meditating on the mindfulness of feelings. This goes back to when she taught this some years ago. One of the purposes is to see them as impermanent and that they're changing moment by moment, and to see how reactive we are to feelings and how they dominate our daily experience. And so usually, unknowingly and automatically, unless we develop this capacity to be aware of this whole sequential process, then we're not aware of our own reactions to them. And that's really the point. And then our karma usually ripens in the feeling component. So we do, absolutely, Vinod is right. If we couldn't cut it, there would be no point in doing what we're doing. But we can't cut it if we don't know it, examine it, and pay careful attention to what this causal chain is, what the result is of like not looking at it. Right? Does that make sense? Does that satisfy your qualm? Okay, well, go ahead.
I was thinking about when I was a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
when you were speaking, and I did start meditating when I was a teenager, but I was also smoking marijuana. Obviously. I can't say that meditation doing me much good.
Yeah.
But I was also listening to Jefferson Airplane.
Yeah.
And they had this song, Life Has Changed How It Differs from the Rocks. And for me, when I was having unpleasant experiences, using that thought helped me. So that was a pretty gross level of being able to kind of manage that. It was beyond the level of feeling, but I was just sitting here thinking, like, I just don't know that, I know from my own experience of working with chronic pain, like having fibromyalgia and having to deal with my body, that at least physical pain, which I think is easier than mental pain,
Yeah.
in terms of the feeling to recognize. I don't know. I guess that the people that are doing pain management are learning how to look at it, so if they're fitting that definition. But I think there's people who just figure these things out. And I think it's possible to do. Now, if you never think about it, you're just on automatic all the time, then I think you're going to be lost.
Yeah.
So maybe we're agreeing, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think we're at odds. I mean, because I haven't had that much physical pain in my life, so I'm really looking at the mental pain. And, I spent a lot of years dousing it, big time. So what exactly was I feeling?
Yeah, I would agree with you.
And even in the moment of my reactivity here now, somebody says the right thing or the wrong thing, somebody looks the right way or the wrong way, that anger is arising. That anger is an expression of wishing to be separated from that painful feeling. No question. But can I analyze the feeling? Well, no, not till I've been on the cushion for a while and think, oh, what was that about? Right. So I'd love to be able to cut it there and stop creating negative karma. But I think it takes a really aware mind. And I've watched, Venerable Children is a model for this. I watched her one time. Someone was really, really angry with her. I think she was teaching. Yes, she was. No, here. She was teaching here, and someone took I don't know, I can't remember what he was objecting to, but said something about what she was teaching and really attacked her in this seat. And I got up and ran down the stairs. And I watched the color come up and the color go down. And she said something like, afflictions arise, and then continue to teach. And I was just stunned. Wow, that was amazing. And something to aspire for, really and truly. So I know the feeling provoked because I could see it. But I also saw that she had the practice and the stability of mind to be able to interrupt it and change it. But still at the feeling level, it was an unpleasant feeling, unmistakably.
If an ordinary mind, like mine, so I'm talking about my ordinary mind, these feelings come so quickly.
Yeah.
I honestly don't think I'm catching them at that point. I'm catching them much further down the road. If I do.
Yeah.
Does it mean down the road when you already getting?
When I'm clear that I'm in an inflicted mental state.
Down the road, like 4 days later, when you go, oh, this was a negative karma ripening.
Not that long.
What was that? Well, for me sometimes, oh, I really should be meditating on the antidote here. Yeah. Yeah, they happen just like that. And it's so useful to think about because it helps explain our experience. And it also, I find, if I'm aware of it, it helps me explain everybody else's. So it really supports having a more compassionate mind. Ouch. That ouch is happening fast. I think the ouches happen faster than the pleasure. I'm not sure. But then we're craving, grasping, and then that gets interrupted, and then we're unhappy. And oh, God. Anyway, here's some ways to meditate on this and see for ourselves. There's a long list. While in meditation, watch how quickly the mind reacts to feelings. Then stay, if we can, with the feeling. To see pleasure for what it is, or to see pain for what it is, without going into the next story about it. Ask, why do I call this pleasure? Or why do I call this pain? Do the same thing throughout the day. Observe your mental feelings. Why do I call this pleasant? Why do I call this unpleasant? Once in a while, I get a little handle on this, and I know that I'm having an unpleasant feeling. I've been really watching this now for about a year. It's not easy. But then I think, and what's so unpleasant about that? You know, to see the trigger. But if I can stop and look at it, it's like, what the heck is that about? Big deal. Oh, it's helpful. What caused the feelings? That's one of the questions Venerable asks. What does the mind do in response to unpleasant mental and physical feelings? What is the raw data there, with body pain especially? Stop and feel the feeling. And if we drop the label unpleasant, what happens? That's part of the work, I think, that they've been doing with pain, right? Pleasant, she said, is often restlessness, especially for sexual feelings. So is that really a pleasant feeling or is it an unpleasant feeling? Cut the link between feeling and craving by observing feeling without going into reactions and stories. Explore the feelings of the past, present, and future, and look at how memories of past pleasant feelings generate desire. You might have seen that in meditation, right? You're purifying a past event, and then off we go. And then there's more to purify. Identify the feeling and the reaction and the interpretation. And that, again, is what Venerable Topper said. There's a potential gap. But without mindfulness of our feelings, they drive us, and our feelings appear inherently existent. And then be aware of contact contact with the object. Physical or mental, that memory of that object. Practice saying, instead of saying, I can't stand this, practice saying, good, this is karma ripening. When pleasant feeling is there, recall, this is positive karma getting used up. That's an interesting thing to think about. And then what are the results of these feelings? To think about that. Then, how to expand the moment between feeling and craving? Slow down. Be aware of the feeling. Stay with and observe the feeling, body, and the mind. So those are some ways to be thinking about looking at feeling.
So someone says, what about all these people that crave pain? I was reading the other day that there's an app now that the kids are using so you can meet up with a random stranger and have a fist fight.
Wow. I don't have any idea what kind of, are they really craving pain? What are they actually craving? Who knows? Some kind of contact, a rush from the adrenaline?
Pleasure should come out of it.
Pleasure should come out of it, yes.
People cut themselves.
Yeah, people do cut themselves.
And the person that will eat them.
Yeah. So, who knows? Do you have a thought?
Yeah, it seems that it wouldn't be painful if they enjoyed it. Most people might consider it pain, but these conceptions that they have cause them to experience it as pleasure.
Well, and it might still even be physical pain, but there's something else in it that's a
Maybe
reward.
it's mental pleasure, but physical pain.
Yeah.
Like what I heard from a therapist is when somebody, for example, is cutting themselves and feels certain pleasure, it's to numb actually the mental pain, emotional pain that's stronger.
Yeah. The emotional pain is so strong that physically overcoming it overpowers the pain. Yeah.
I've actually talked to people who were cutters, and a lot of times they're doing it just so that they know that they're alive. They're feeling something, and that's the only time they can feel something is when they're actually cutting themselves.
Mm-hmm. So like numbing out mental pain, can we make that?
They're numb anyways. They're trying to find a feeling.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And pain is just a label, and it's individual. It's unique to each individual.
Yeah,
What's
that's
painful to me might not be painful to somebody else.
Yeah, also true. I think if we boiled it down to the very, very subtle chain, contact, feeling, craving, clinging, that we would, at that subtle level, it'd be the same mechanism running the system. How it looks on the outside, you're right, it all looks different. We all have a different reaction response. But I think if we looked at it at the level that the Buddha was describing it, it would all be the same causal chain. Like that. Feeling and emotion are not the same thing. Right? So that's what they go to next in the book. Buddhism, science, and emotions. And Buddhists and scientists have some very similar, they say, says the book, and some very different ideas about emotions. So in general, scientists describe an emotion as having three components: a physiological component, an experiential component, and a behavioral component. So the physiology includes the chemical and electrical changes in the brain, the galvanic skin response, the heart rate, other measurable body changes. The experiential component is subjective, so the psychological mood or feeling aspect. And the behavioral aspect includes the words and actions of a person motivated by that emotion. So that's the scientific view, generally speaking. From the Buddhist perspective, emotions are mental states and subjective experiences. So they may be accompanied by physiological effects, change in the body's physiology and the brain's activities, but they are not the emotion itself. Consequently, of the three components mentioned above, Buddhists speak of emotions only in terms of the second, what we experience, feel, and think. So, it wasn't in this book. Thupten Jinpa, who developed the C-Care, cultivating compassionate something training. Anyway, the Stanford compassionate training. In this Science of Compassion video, he talks about how he reminds his scientific colleagues that they are the new kids on the block. That science is now very interested in measuring, this emotions and stuff like that. But he says, humans have been interested in this field for a long time, especially Buddhists. And that right from the beginning, Buddhism was interested in understanding human psychology. He said Buddha can be seen as the first psychologist. And that Buddhism's goal to Buddhahood explores how we get there and what are the mechanics of that. So in exploring those mechanics, that's the underlying, this whole detailed philosophy. But he says it's not unlike the Socratic model, which I thought was interesting. Not unlike what Socrates said, that in the end, it is knowledge that frees you. Knowledge of what? Knowledge of reality. Particularly of the reality of our mental world. Which, from Jinpa's point of view, in a sense, is where we live most of our life, and in a sense, we all live in a world created by our own mind. So to spend time, as we have been, spend time as the Buddha taught, how fortunate we are to know this, really looking at our own mind and how it works is like the key. So as Venerable said when we got to this section, our body influences our mind, but it doesn't control it or create it. It influences it, but it doesn't control it or create it. We have options of various ways to react to how our body affects us. We have many choices. We can cultivate a positive attitude and work with antidotes to negative attitudes. The fact that our intentions and emotions are the forces behind what we say and do means that by changing them, we transform our actions and our lives. So much of our well-being depends on what we think and how we think, and that is something we can learn. I think we'll go to this meditation. So we talk about so much of our well-being depends on what we think and how we think. This is something we can learn and something we can change. So this meditation on transforming anger into compassion and the practice of patience or fortitude is in this little Lam-Rim outline book put together by Venerable Karen Valham. Mine's quite beat up. It's probably not so, it's more for me to purify as my care for Dharma books, but boy, I have used this little book a lot. And this particular meditation includes many of the antidotes. So I want to talk through it, and then I thought we might just do it for how to work with transforming anger into compassion in the practice of patience. Because following on this feeling, I don't know. I really invite you to give it a look. I guess it was last winter's retreat when I started to finally start to pay attention to what this uncomfortable mental feeling, what my responses to uncomfortable mental feelings was. And it was a little like, wow, I can't tolerate very much. The slightest little uncomfortable mental feeling, and I want to fix it, change it, get out of there, or destroy the person standing in front of me. It's like that. Boom, boom. So this meditation has been quite helpful and continues to be, and I still, obviously, as you all know, have not mastered it in any way, shape, or form, but it's worth continuing to work on. So it's presented in 3 points. I'm sure this is Lama Zopa Rinpoche. It's not attributed, but I'm sure it's who it is. It covers the patience of voluntarily bearing suffering or accepting suffering, the patience of thinking about the Dharma, the patience of having compassion for the enemy. Okay. So in the first step, the patience of voluntarily bearing or accepting suffering, or the fortitude of voluntarily bearing or accepting suffering. The first point to try to cultivate, even as a habitual response, when a painful situation is arising, to think, this is our samsaric nature. This is the nature of samsara, to be uncomfortable. It's the nature of samsara to be unsatisfactory. What am I holding as an ideal that I will get through a good day? It's a day I get through the whole day without any hassle. This is not a bodhicitta motivation, right? This is a motivation of the 8 worldly concerns. So when suffering of any unsatisfactoriness arises in the mind, remembering this is the nature of samsara itself. And practicing that, I think we've come up many times over the last little while, practicing acceptance of samsara. Evens the mind out. Second point, right away, remembering any unpleasant experience is arising as a result of my own karmic creation. This is a result of my own past negative action. Personally, I would say this is an easy phrase to adopt, to actually examine how much I believe it in my mind. Harder. But I think by habituating ourselves to it, we get clearer and clearer. Oh, this is really a result of my own past negative actions. And the Wheel of Sharp Weapons is a great resource for looking at, meditating on, thinking about those verses and what the results are of specific negative actions. So the conclusion to this part is replace the nagging question, why should this befall me, with why not? Why not? It's my samsaric nature. It's the karma I created. Why not? So then if we get through that point and get the mind settled a little bit, the patience, the second point, the patience of thinking about the Dharma. So how do we do that? By blaming the experience on our own self-cherishing thought. That's the first point. So yes, it's our karmic creation, and then, okay, it's my own self-cherishing thought that got me here. It's also my own self-cherishing thought that's spinning the story about it. And the next step is a little bit harder, and you can't go there without getting your mind quite settled. But recognizing that the object of our anger is in fact very precious and useful for us to overcome hatred forever. Like a precious treasure. How does that whole verse go? Whenever I meet a person of bad nature who is overwhelmed by negative energy and intense suffering, I will hold such a rare one dear as if I had found a precious treasure. Like that. It's from the 8 verses. Then the third step, if we've gotten somewhere with that, is to, by taking the opportunity of turning the experience into a sincere Dharma practice. So then we can look at this difficult situation and go, okay, this is for my practice. Now the mind is starting to really change, if we've gotten this far. Replace the thought that this is a bad experience, bad is in capital letters, with this is good, capital letters, exclamation point. So that's the conclusion of that section. The patience of thinking about the Dharma, blaming the experience on our own self-cherishing thought, recognizing the object of our anger is very precious, and then taking the opportunity to turn the experience into genuine Dharma practice. At that point, we are beginning, well, maybe somewhere else, as soon as we've changed it, but it's really starting to feel like virtue. It's really starting to feel like virtue. I suppose the minute we sit down and try to analyze it, we're heading towards virtue, but to me, this feels like a shift. Then the third point, the fortitude of having compassion for the enemy. How? First, by remembering the faults of afflictions and karma and wanting to stop them. Wanting to stop them in myself, but also wanting to stop them for everybody. That afflictions are the enemy, not that person. And wanting to stop afflictions and karma, the negative karma ripening for everybody. The next point is worded in a way that is interesting, but this is how I work with it. It's called recognizing the weakness of the other and refusing to retaliate. So I think by weakness, it doesn't mean that the person is inferior or anything like that, but by recognizing that at that moment, they're overwhelmed by their afflictions too. That's the weakness, which I have also. And so because that overwhelmedness by affliction is a weakness, how could I retaliate? And then from there, generating genuine forgiveness from the depth of our heart. And so, as Venerable Chödrön talks about, forgiveness is simply putting down the anger. Simply is probably not the right way to say it. Simply is putting down the anger. Forgiveness is putting down the anger. Genuinely from the depths of one's heart, and then the conclusion, mentally extend your feeling of forgiveness towards all living beings. And concentrate for as long as you can in this state. So should we try it? Yeah. So let's just do it for a few minutes. You begin, this doesn't always work exactly, but begin by visualizing a person in front of you with whom you have had a difficult relationship. Could simply be a difficult encounter. And then have a genuine wish to transform our view. So we may have to work a little bit on a motivation for a moment to do that. And so we start with the first step of cultivating the fortitude of voluntarily bearing or accepting our suffering. And so the first point is remembering this is the nature of samsara. This is our own samsaric nature. And then following on the heels of realizing that anything, all phenomena, contaminated by ignorance is in the nature of, is unsatisfactory by nature. Then we can remember that whatever painful experience we're having is a result of our own past destructive action. It's our own karmic creation. And the conclusion of that section is we replace the nagging question, why this should happen to me, with why not. And then we practice the fortitude of thinking about, relying, practicing the Dharma. We do that by first blaming the experience on our own self-centered thought. How would that be so? And then if we've been able to own the experience a bit, it's easier to turn the mind to the idea that the object of our anger is in fact very precious and useful. In fact, it's essential for us to overcome hatred forever. We can only practice fortitude and overcome that hateful mind in response to people that provoke it. And so they're very precious. And this begins to turn the mind towards the third point, that begins to see that this experience is a sincere Dharma practice, and appreciating it for that. Which leads to the conclusion, replace the thought, this is a bad experience, with this is good. And then the third big point is having the fortitude of having compassion for the enemy. How do we do that? By first recalling the faults of afflictions, the faults of being propelled by our karma, and wanting to stop them for everyone. And second, by recognizing the weakness of the other, recognizing that they are overwhelmed by afflictions and karma too. Recognizing that if they're doing something that's really harmful, that they're suffering themselves. And refusing to retaliate. And from that compassionate feeling, having this genuine forgiveness arise from your heart. And then we'll take a few minutes to extend that forgiveness as it comes up, extending it to all living beings, and concentrate on that if you can. Any comments about that?
It changes the perspective by labeling what I perceive to be as harmful behavior under arising from afflictions as a weakness. Even if working through one situation where I would attribute saying, oh, that person was afflicted, but to say that there's a weakness, it softens it considerably and helps turn the mind more.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think in our, I'm going to blame it a little bit on our culture, but maybe it's something innate in our mind, I don't know. But anyway, our wish to like blame, you know. So, okay, now I know you have afflictions. You have to be judged for having afflictions when that's not at all the point. This really moves us into a different place. Oh, we're all afflicted. We're all afflicted. We're working with it, but helps us have compassion, hold each other more open-heartedly. Yeah.
I found that there's very powerful meditation actually because of all the different angles, but the first point especially, like remembering this is the nature of samsara, because it's amazing how many times you can read about it, and then when you're confronted with a difficult situation, you know, opening up to that as that's the nature of samsara manifesting, not fighting it. How to say, like, I'm always surprised, like, how my mind just doesn't easily go there at all, actually.
I think even so, I don't have real transformation of this meditation yet, but still it opens to some extent my awareness and the connection to the other person. Even if it's a little bit, you know, it's a step into the right direction. So that's where I am at when I do these meditations, that direction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, you know, every step, every time we turn our mind in a different direction, it's opening up a different pathway or a different way from thinking, from our habitual way of doing it. And I think the reason I'm so attracted to this meditation is because it, you know, it brings in, the more you study the Dharma, the richer each point becomes. And so it becomes a very practical application for our book learning. Very practical, useful.
I had a question from earlier in the review. So my understanding is the body consciousness pervades all, including the 5 other sense consciousnesses. So my question that I've been thinking about for a few weeks and can't quite grasp is, what's an example of an unpleasant feeling arising or accompanying the I consciousness?
Is that a hand going up? No. Just your ear.
The body consciousness.
What's an unpleasant feeling residing with the, you said I consciousness or body consciousness?
In the I consciousness. Is that something that you could perceive?
Yeah.
What would be an example of that?
Oh, seeing a bloody body on the ground, or, you know, trash heaps or ugly sights.
My thought is that might be mental because you're creating a story about that because somebody might think that's a nice thing to see.
Well, they might, and that might be a different perception. But, you know, this interesting thing about, and I'm not an expert on this at all. I'm not saying that I know this from any knowledge, but we've talked a lot about what does the sense consciousness know. Mm-hmm. But contact, like there's each one, contact happens with each of the senses and a feeling immediately arises. Immediately. So, and when they give the examples or when they talk about it, they say, you know, we want to see beautiful sights, we don't want to see ugly sights. So that's we want to have pleasant tastes, don't want to have unpleasant tastes, we want to hear lovely sounds, we don't want to have dissonant sounds, we want to hear praise, we don't want to hear criticism. So by the time I think it gets to the grossness of being expressed, it sounds like a story, but it seems that the sense conscious, the sense consciousness is present with that feeling. Does that make sense? Get that picture?
I think it's easier to think about with an odor because, like, some odors are so noxious that just the physical, the smell of them itself is like, you don't have to have a real,
Thought.
you don't have to have a lot of words where you're going into thoughts. It's just
Right.
noxious.
Right.
Like, especially like, gasoline smells or
Yeah. Yeah.